Why do you want to be vice president?
This week, an Issue Is exclusive. The first TV sit-down with Robert F. Kennedy's pick for VP, Nicole Shanahan.
Are there any vaccines that you think should be mandated for children? What in your background prepares you to be commander-in-chief?
Broadcasting across California, you're watching The Issue Is.
Welcome to The Issue Is. I'm Elex Michaelson, reporting this week from Malibu. We've come to the home of Nicole Shanahan, the California native who wants to be vice president.
Kennedy announced the Shanahan choice in March in her hometown of Oakland. As a child, her family depended on government assistance. She'd go on to become a lawyer, a tech exec, and a progressive Democrat. She'd marry Google co-founder Sergey Brin. After their daughter was diagnosed with autism, her political worldview began to shift. Shanahan helped fund Kennedy's Super Bowl ad. After that, Shanahan's life partner, Jacob Strumwasser, suggested Kennedy pick Shanahan for VP.
Nicole Shanahan, welcome to The Issue Is for the first time.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for having us at this beautiful home.
Oh.
I love Malibu. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. It's so cool to be here.
We're in front of a stone fruit orchard that's producing right now, so we're on a live farm.
Yeah, okay. If we get hungry later, I know where to go.
Yeah.
Let's start with the most basic question. Why do you want to be vice president?
I want to be vice president because I want to take my learnings of being a mother in today's America, being somebody who has really looked at our healthcare issues, who understands deeply our AI challenges and the technology landscape of this country, and I want to bring it to the White House. I think that there's a great need right now to bring a youthful, capable mindset and framing to the biggest issues that are challenging this country today.
For some of the people that are watching this will be the first time that they've really heard from you. Can you explain as concisely as possible sort of your life story and what prepares you for this moment?
I'm from Oakland, California, and my childhood was one, it's all too common actually in this country, with a parent with substance abuse and mental health challenges, and a mother who was effectively a single parent, also an immigrant, didn't speak much English.
From China?
She's from southern China, from Guangzhou. And I always believed from a very young age that I lived in the greatest country in the world. So this idea of living in a country where you get ahead based on merit is ingrained in who I am. And my dream from a very young age was to become an intellectual property lawyer. And in law school, I became an AI developer because I wanted to solve some of the issues in the patent practice using AI and automation. Was successful, was hired by Stanford.
And you're also a mom,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Most important job title of all.
Mm-hmm.
And your daughter has really helped shape your worldview, right? How so?
I'm doing this from a place of serving the best interest of my child every day, knowing that we live in a country where there's skyrocketing chronic health issues. My daughter's impacted. She is part of that statistic. And I have spent...
diagnosed with autism.
She was diagnosed with autism at 19 months. I've spent the better part of the last 3 years fully dedicated to autism. And it has led me to meet some incredible scientists. It's led me to understand what is going on at a depth that I would have never otherwise have gotten to. You know, we've been framed as being, hard on vaccines, and I think what we are pro is pro-safety. We're pro-safety, testing, science.
So you bring up the vaccine issue. Obviously, that's talked about a lot. We know you're not a big fan of the COVID-19 vaccine. Certainly don't think that should be mandated for people. You say if people want to have it, they should have the choice to have it. But there are also plenty of vaccines that are mandated right now. Are there any vaccines that you think should be mandated for children?
I believe in medical freedom. I believe that with full, true, informed consent, a parent will make the best decision for their child.
So for example, polio vaccine or MMR or some of these things that right now kids are mandated to get in order to go to school, you think that shouldn't be in place?
I don't think mandates should exist for any healthcare decisions related to children.
Is there any of those things that you're comfortable with personally that you would take by choice?
Historically, I have always complied with the CDC's recommendations. What I have noticed is that there has been less and less informed consent over time. And there has been, since the 1986 Vaccine Act, a lack of liability for when a vaccine is either not effective or causes more injury than we would accept. I think something happened after 1986. The number of vaccines on the childhood vaccine schedule have quadrupled in our lifetime, and the amount of childhood disease has increased, not decreased. So that is the concern. If they are safe and effective, yes, let's let parents make an informed choice about giving them to their children. If they are neither effective, as the Ninth Circuit has declared about the COVID-19 vaccine, it's not effective, it doesn't stop transmission, it's not a true inoculation, and then begin to allow us to investigate potential injuries.
But are there any vaccines you think are safe and effective?
If you separate the vaccine schedule apart and you consider whether or not there is a polio outbreak or likely polio outbreak, that is one that I would consider as being one that I would say let's take it to prevent further transmission. I'm completely updated on all of my vaccines. I have 3 Moderna shots. My daughter has received all of her childhood vaccines. And I will say that both her and I have had adverse reactions. It then begs the question, would I have done it if knowing what I know now? And my answer is resoundingly, I would have spread them out more. I would have done further research. I would have studied Merck's MMR vaccine much more closely as to why it was combined with mumps. And then I would understand the commercial incentives.
Let's talk about another issue that I think is often misrepresented, which is abortion.
Yeah.
What is your position when it comes to abortion rights?
If I was carrying a child and the child was viable and fully healthy, I would be incredibly motivated to keep that child. And if we are representing medical freedom advocacy, it's important for us to recognize that a woman's right to choose, especially early on, especially for a woman who is vigilant, should always be available. It is part of healthcare. The issue around late-term abortions is one that I think when you look at statistically, we have to have a full conversation around it. It's not so black and white as yes, late-term abortion or no late-term abortion. It's are there medical complications? Are there issues around viability of the baby? If there is a viable baby and there are alternatives being presented, that oftentimes changes a woman's decisions.
So is there a point there, then 15 weeks, 20 weeks, something like that, where you would support an abortion ban?
I think that it becomes about viability, not necessarily term limits. And this is why the states now have the opportunity to make that decision.
Did the Supreme Court get it right with the Dobbs decision?
Personally, I was saddened. I think that anytime you take something as historic as Roe v. Wade and the headline is it's been reversed, it startles you. It necessarily startles you. However, that being said, when you look at it, it was an issue of constitutional law. It was whether or not this was a state issue or a federal issue.
So do you think that abortion should be a states' rights issue?
It's what we have right now. And I can see a benefit. We have to look at it in the positive because it's what we have, and we have to make the best with what we have. Whether or not I'm happy with that or not is irrelevant.
You know, there's a lot of women that are going to say it's not irrelevant what you think about that.
Whether or not it's state or federal, it's a constitutional issue.
Yeah.
I think that I care very, very deeply about the issue itself. I think the order of operations of how we get to that is out of my hands.
Yeah. Speaking of that, as an attorney, which Supreme Court justice do you think is the kind that you would want to emulate? Who is your favorite? Do you have a favorite Supreme Court justice?
Well, it's actually a pair.
Okay, sure.
So you would think that Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Justice Scalia couldn't have been more different. Scalia was a constitutional originalist, and Ginsburg was a real progressive, trying to push modern day interpretations of the Constitution. But the two of them were actually quite good friends. And that's the America that I think we need to return to.
But did you agree more with RBG's worldview?
I think it was the merging of them that
You like the
created
both. Okay.
The right
Their
path
kid.
forward.
Their kid is the ideal.
It was their
justice.
constitutional child.
Up next, Shanahan as a potential commander-in-chief.
We're talking with Nicole Shanahan, Robert F. Kennedy's choice for vice president. We're sitting in your beautiful farm.
Yeah.
And I know you are incredibly passionate about farming, about regenerative farming. And I got to give you guys credit because nobody's talking about food. And we all should be talking about food. It is
Yeah.
the foundation
It's
of our life.
everything.
What do you want to see different on a federal level? What would you do as vice president on the issue of food?
I would spend an enormous amount of time with our members of Congress discussing the Farm Bill. For the first time in American history, we're going to have a farm bill that exceeds $1 trillion. And most of that goes into SNAP. And the largest product purchased with SNAP is soda.
And SNAP, for people that may not know, that's basically what used to be called food stamps.
Correct.
Right.
When I was a child, we spent a few years using food stamps because my family couldn't afford to put food on the table. This is very common right now in the United States. We have millions of families on the SNAP program. And it is not actually supporting growing healthy food. Virtually none of it goes into thinking about the soil. The parts of it that are dedicated to conservation are not super successful also in focusing on soil that then produces healthy food that we know improves human health. And none of this makes any sense at all. And as vice president, I'll be spending an enormous amount of time helping members of Congress recognize the incredible cognitive dissonance and the fact that they are gutting the American family through gutting their metabolic health with these programs.
It's a big part of your why, it sounds like.
It's a huge part of my why.
Let's spend a moment talking about foreign policy, because as vice president, if the worst case scenario would happen, you'd become the commander-in-chief. And I'm curious, what in your background prepares you to be commander-in-chief?
I think that I have a very sophisticated view on foreign affairs due to my previous work, both in intellectual property law. I understand how global commerce works. I understand how we build batteries around the world. I understand the importance of semiconductors. I understand that big foreign policy decisions are made specifically around semiconductors. And I also am multicultural. My background is one in which I've spent most of my spiritual life studying world religions. And I think it's really important right now for us to understand and respect each other's religious alignment. And understand the depths and the nuances of it. I think that also I have a great deal of understanding, compassion, strength, and will to put America first.
Speaking of world religions, the Middle East, obviously that goes back to the foundation of so many religions. Israel right now, we have this conflict between Israel and Hamas. What do you do if you're vice president?
The United States has failed miserably over the last few administrations in its involvement in the Middle East. Our occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan, it was incredibly problematic, and you can trace where we are today due to the mishandling of our involvement after 9/11. I believe that we are at a time in which we need to expedite a Marshall Plan in the region. We need to work on going back to normalization efforts. The continued intervention that we've had, the nature of that intervention, the military force has not resulted in peace in the region.
So is that less spending towards Israel?
I think that assisting Israel with its defenses is important, and continuing to support the Iron Dome is something that I can fully support. However, military escalation in the region, especially beyond the borders of Gaza, is something that I don't think anyone is prepared for. I don't think the United States is in a position to be entering into that conflict.
When we come back,
If you wake up on November 5th and Donald Trump is president again, could you live with yourself for that? Let's talk for a moment just about how you win this thing, because I know a lot of people are looking for that. What state are you all most likely to win?
Well, we're not going to give away our full path to victory strategy, but we have a 5-inch thick strategy document that we're following.
The top line. What's the most? Because there are a lot of people that want to support you, that want to donate, but that maybe are thinking they can't win, so I'm not going to support them. What do you say to those people?
We can most definitely win. We have a very thorough strategy and a path towards victory. We will be on 50 ballots. We have a very strong legal team, one of the most motivated legal teams to defend every ballot, petition, lawsuit we're receiving from the DNC. It's PACs aligned with the DNC that are undermining democracy, in my opinion, to try to keep us off the ballot. I've never met a party that hates democracy more than the current leadership within the Democratic Party. But regardless, we love democracy, and we're fighting tooth and nail for it, and we will have success. We have had success. We have submitted more signatures than any independent candidate in history just to get on the ballot. Our polling has increased because people believe that we can win. Once people believe we can win, we win.
Yeah.
There's a dozen states we're looking at in which we're doing incredibly well. And you can probably, the DNC has some idea which states those are as well, because those are ones that they prioritize their lawsuits in.
Do you think that Trump and Biden are equal threats to the country?
Trump is a different kind of threat, I believe, than Biden is, but both represent corporate corruption to me.
Yeah.
And if you look at Trump's first term in office, he never drained the swamp. He just filled it with his corporate loyalists.
I mean, you're a progressive Democrat for much of your life, right? And you've had this political evolution. But if you wake up on November 5th and Donald Trump is president again, and there are people that think that your campaign is the reason why, could you live with yourself for that?
I honestly think they're almost identical, and we would be hearing it from either side. That just is emblematic of the division in this country. My response to them would be, we live in a democracy, and we have to respect our fellow countrymen who voted for this president. If there's an opportunity for us to work across the lines to make sure that the American public is safe under the next administration, that's our duty. That's what we represent.
up next, Shanahan on misconceptions.
We do something on the show called Personal Issues. So this is the first thing that comes to mind, sort of rapid fire, and let's have some fun with this. So what is your favorite TV show?
I really love The Invincible Kimmy Schmidt.
Nice. Favorite book?
Oh goodness. I've been reading a lot of Peter Kingsley lately, but I also like Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. I think it's a beautiful book.
What's your favorite movie of all time?
I've been watching so much Moana with my
there you
daughter, so
go.
I think that Moana's got to be my favorite because it's all I know at this point.
Favorite musical artist?
Favorite musical artist? Oh, Talking Heads. David Byrne, I think, is such an inspiring person.
Yeah, and a great, interesting performer in so many ways.
Yeah.
Favorite sports team?
The A's when they were in Oakland.
I know, headed to Vegas. Who is your role model?
My role model are the moms, the warrior moms. They are just some of the strongest, brightest, most caring, big-hearted people I've ever met.
And lastly, there's been so much written about you. What do you think is the biggest misconception about you?
I think the biggest misconception about me is that I somehow lack qualifications for this work. And I think another misconception is that I somehow was only selected for my financial contribution. Because if you look at my financial contribution compared to how much the other two parties have raised from corporations, it's so negligible, it's pennies.
But you will be donating. Will you be donating more to the campaign?
Yeah, I think that my goal is to make sure we are on the ballots and we give people a third option at the ballot box in November.
And just lastly, since unfortunately you guys aren't in the debates, and I wish you were, and maybe you will be in the vice presidential debate by the time it gets there,
Yeah.
what's your closing argument to the people of California and America in terms of why you?
There will be a separation of corporation and state. I will never be bought. I will always speak on behalf of the people of this country, and I will do everything in my capability to protect our children.
Nicole Shanahan, it's been such a pleasure to get to know you. Thank you so much for having us in
you.
your beautiful home again, and best of luck to you out on the campaign
It
trail.
was a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You can stream the full unedited interview at youtube.com/Elex Michaelson or listen in podcast form by searching for The Issue Is.